So I'm going to start with an overview of what we're going to talk about today in the AEM Image Component webinar. The first thing we're going to do is review some of the things that we talked about for images, image types, optimizing, some accessibility. We're going to go into a little deeper dig in a little bit deeper about web image accessibility, and then we're going to talk about the different aspects of the image component, and I will demonstrate using a couple photos and the things, the best way to set that up and how to use it on a page. And then it's probably going to be a shorter one than last time. So I'm going to give you some time at the end and have an open discussion where you can ask any questions that you have regarding images, anything that we covered in the last couple webinars, anything to do with the image component. So you remember that some of the guidelines for using images are that number one, it should have a purpose. And some questions that you can ask yourself: are there any benefits to using a particular picture? Does it help the user understand the point that you're trying to make? Does it create emotional appeal? How does the image relate to my brand? What does the message does the image send? And how will my visitors respond to this image? Those are some questions that you can ask yourself when you're getting ready to use some images. And don't forget that copyright is a huge issue. Unless you took the photo or you got it from our communication service, creative and communication service, OCCS, you can assume that every image online is copyrighted. So you shouldn't use anything that's not yours or ours, from OCCS. And remember that for the OCCS guidelines, that for any CAES materials that contain images featuring a person, you have to get a you have to get permission. Sorry, the name of the paper just totally flew out of my mind. But anyway, you have to get permission to use that photograph. And of course, in the case of minors, which I know that you know, with a lot of 4-H things going on, you have to get permission from the parents or guardians in writing that you can use their photos online. Remember, there are 3 image types. The first one is PNG, limited color palette. You can do some images that are kind of complex, but it's not as good for complex images as a JPEG, but they are kind of smaller in size. And the PNG 24 is a much higher quality image, but it's a bigger file. So, and we'll be talking about file size later. Of course, GIF is an option for images where there's only a few colors. So like logos are a good example. If you want to use a logo, a GIF is perfect for that. They're small files, but because they only have, they're limited to 256 colors, you should never use those for actual photos. And then, of course, the most popular and the one that's used most widely in our websites, and of course on the personnel database for your photos, it's required, a JPEG. It's perfect for photos because complex images with lots and lots of colors and shadows and complex patterns are displayed well. Continuing the review, don't forget that in January, Google announced that mobile search algorithms will begin to take page load speed into account starting in July, but it's always a good idea to get ahead of the curve and start optimizing your photos. And one way that you can optimize your photos and reduce the size, and that's the file size, not the actual image size, but the file size, is by compressing them and using a compression software or like the tiny JPG app that's online. You remove hidden data that reduces the file size, and the apps are like Tiny JPG are a quick way, an easy way to compress those files down to a much smaller size without losing quality. And I know last time we went over a little bit of time and I didn't get a chance to show you Tiny JPG, but I will show you that today. Then one of the other things that we talked about the last time is alt text, and this has to do with web image accessibility. The USG, the federal government, we have guidelines that that you'll hear, well, you'll hear me talk about 508 compliant, and these are guidelines that make websites accessible to every person, whether they have a disability or whether they are, you know, blind, deaf, or even if they have mobility issues. So the main purpose for accessibility for alt text is that people using screen readers, the alt text can be read aloud, or it can be rendered as Braille so that people who are reading in Braille can read what's on your website. People using speech input software, so someone with a mobility issue can use a voice command to click on a button or a linked image. People browsing speech-enabled websites, the alternative text, the alt text is read aloud. And then mobile web users, sometimes, you know, if there are a lot of images that bog down a site on your phones, you can turn the images off. And so what happens is the alt text is what will show up instead of the image, and it'll cause the page on the phone to upload a lot more quickly. And then also, and the last two here don't necessarily have to do with the 508 compliance, just how they're used to more effectively. And so the last one is the search engine optimization. Images are now indexable and can be searched by search engines like Google. And so that just helps your site and your images to be found easier, more easily. There are 4 different functions for images according to the W3, no, 3WC. It's basically the consortium that makes all of the rules for the web, for the internet, and how things are designed and how things are put together. And they also have guidelines for using images that are accessible online. And so they talk about 4 different types of or functions of image. And first of all, an image can be informative. That they usually graphically represent concepts. Their pictures, photos, and illustrations. And the alternative text should be at least a short description that gives the user the essential information that's in the image. And then a functional image would be an image used as a link, or if I know that we have buttons built into our template, so we don't really have to worry about it, but some people and sometimes use images for buttons that actually look like a button. So those, the alt text on those should describe the functionality of the link rather than the visual image. So examples, of course, they say are a printer icon that represents the print function, or a button to submit a form are the 2 examples. Images of text. Readable text is sometimes put in an image. That is not, that's not the desired way to use images and text. But if you have to have an image that has text in it, the alt text should contain the same words that are in the image. And then complex images like graphs and diagrams that convey data or detailed information need to have a full text equivalent of the data or information in the image in the alt text. If you want to, for fun, I did this once when I was a student and putting together a website. You can go to this link and add this screen reader emulator for Firefox and have the emulator read your page so that you can close your eyes and experience it as someone who has to listen to a web page. And I think you'll notice if you've missed an alt text or if you have a description that's not so good, it'll really help you see that. Okay, the AEM Image Component. I know that I've trained many of you, and so you know exactly what this is. Basically, it's the component that just houses a single image. You've got the image tab here that you would use to drag and drop your image here. For the image component, images that you use the maximum image size, and these are the pixels, the actual image itself. The maximum is 1200 pixels wide and 800 pixels high. So the largest possible image that you could use would be 1200 by 800. Now, for file size, there is not really a limit that I know of, and Robbie may be able to tell me if that's true or not. But as a good rule of thumb, if you want to use like header images, the file size for each image should be 60 kilobytes. And for high-end photographs that need really good quality, like pictures of people, and you want to be able to recognize who they are, should you should try to keep those to within 100 kilobytes at the absolute maximum.
Yeah, Melissa, AEM, it won't, it doesn't limit the size itself, but as you're saying, it's good practice to use these
Okay, I didn't get that last part, Robbie.
things. I'm sorry. AEM, it won't, it doesn't limit the size itself, but it is good practice to use these limits that you're pointing out here.
Okay, so yes, while AEM doesn't limit the file size that you can that you can upload, just because of everything we sort of talked about with, you know, wanting your pages to load quickly, and the fact that Google's going to now start, you know, rating pages based on how long things download or images download. You know, we want to try to keep these numbers as small as possible. So just as a general rule of thumb, around 60 kilobytes for like a header image, and 100 kilobytes for high-end photographs that, you know, for example, of people that you know you want others to recognize. Now, when you click on the second tab, the Advanced tab, you have to give it a title. That is mandatory. So the title field is mandatory and the alt text is optional. And the only reason that the alt text is not mandatory is because the way the component is written is that it uses the title text as the alt text if the alt text is left blank. So when we're talking about writing alt text, we're also, in this case, for our image component, we're talking about giving them titles. I've got an article here to talk that talks a little bit more about, and can you guys see that, or did it go away? I don't see the green around my window anymore. Robbie, can you see that article, phase 2?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So basically, you want to keep it simple. Think of it like a tweet. You have 140 characters to get to the point. One of the things when you're creating the titles or using alt text that need to be descriptive for people who, you know, have screen readers or don't have images turned on, you need to ask yourself, why is this image used and what is it supposed to convey? And in choosing your image, you most likely have already at least thought a little bit about those things. So what we've got here is some examples of some images, what the message is supposed to convey, what the image is, and then what good alt text is and what bad alt text is. So on the first one, we have a picture of a bunch of people at some sort of game, some sort of sporting event. So in particular, so this is a Big Ten, the scenario is this is a Big Ten college website, and they want to use this photo. So their audience is prospective students. The message they want to convey is that they've got a diverse student body, youthful energy, school spirit, and a big campus feel. So to look at this image, the alt text that they suggest is a large, diverse group of cheering students standing up and fist pumping on the bleachers of a basketball game. that's very descriptive, and it pretty much says everything that they wanted it to convey. A bad alt text example would be a crowd at a basketball game. And it's ineffective because it doesn't convey the young students filled with school spirit or conjure any sort of excitement. On the scenario 2 is a disaster recovery help website. And so their audience are aid victims and donors. The message to convey is effects of a disaster, help is on the way, people, unity. So for the good alt text example, he's got forlorn children stare at the rubble that was once their house in the wake of a tornado. And then bad alt text is torn down house from a tornado. It's ineffective because it doesn't communicate the personal focus of this photo, which of course is the forlorn children. And then third is a professional headshot that clients and colleagues would look at. The message to convey is approachable, trustworthy, business, yet approachable. And so we've got the guy in the suit. Good alt text example, a middle-aged man in a sports jacket and a white tie leans against a railing with his hands resting in front of him. Bad alt text, Mr. Smith against a staircase. The good alt text is, of course, very much more descriptive. Some additional notes. You don't need to write photo of or image of in the alt text because that's inferred by the image tag. Logos in the alt text just indicate that it is a logo. And if that particular logo links to the home page, which our templates are already set up, so you don't really have to worry about that, but you would put phase 2 home or whatever your home page is. Images text, images as text. If you have images as text, the alt text again should be the text that's in the image, but it's really not a good thing to use images with text in them. Background images we don't have to really worry about, but if you do have an image that has no other purpose than being decorative, then you would just leave the alt text as blank and the screen readers will just read over it. But our image component takes the title and reads that and puts that in automatically for the alt text. So that's why we really don't recommend using just images for decoration. All right, let me go back here and uh-oh. Before we get to discussion, I can't get my I can't get out of here. So I'm going to stop share for a second and I'll be right back. All right, so here we are in AEM. What I've done, I'm going to show you my desktop here in a second. So what I've got here are two images that I basically downloaded from my camera. And you can see the name is DSC0070 JPG. And when you hover over it and have that little box pop up, you can see that the dimensions are 4,288 pixels by 2,848 pixels, and the size of the photo is 5.97 megabytes. And then this one, same dimensions, excuse me, same dimensions, but the file size is a little bit smaller, 4.92 megabytes. So basically these two are going to have to be edited for online use. Now the last time we talked, and I think since a few months ago, PicMonkey wasn't free anymore, so I've been demonstrating and showing you all how to use Canva. It's canva.com/photo-editor. So I've already gone online and edited these, and you can see now the size, the dimensions of the image of the Rottweiler are 727 pixels by 797 pixels. And then the soccer picture is 1,000 pixels wide by 639 pixels. The file sizes are 164 kilobytes and 180 kilobytes. So they need to be compressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and this is tinyjpg.com. Basically, if you've got your window open above it, you can just click them and drag them right there. If you don't have your window open like that, you can just click on this picture and it'll open up the upload dialog. Let's see, we've got Rottweiler. And you can also do multiples at a time. I think we'll see in a minute what their limit is for file size, doing them at once. On a PC, if you want to select two different files at a different place, you'll click on the first file, find the other file, hold down Control and click. Since they're not right next to each other, if they were right next to each other, you could just use Shift click. So I've got those two files, and I'm just going to click on Open, and you'll see they'll open up right here. Excuse me. And that didn't take long at all. And the children playing soccer is still a little over 100, so we'll just have to be happy with that. But the Rottweiler picture compressed down 53%. So basically, when you're done, you're going to download all, or if you've got a Dropbox folder, you can save to your Dropbox. What I'm going to do is download them all. It's going to download them in a zip file. Here we go. Oh, I guess that's for Pro. Up to 20 images, maximum of 5 megs each. So if you're doing them by bulk, no more than 20 images to compress. And so tinyfi.zip, I'm going to open that. And I'm going to extract it. And the reason I've got 2 copies there is because I did a practice run earlier. So I'm going to extract those. I'm going to extract them onto the desktop. And I'm going to auto rename because I want to keep the original files just in case. And so here they are. So I'm going to go back to the assets and I'm just going to put these in here, create a new folder. And if we stretch this window out a little bit, we can see 136. And then I'm going to scroll down and 78, 78, and I'm going to pick the underscore one. Again, control, click. And I got my 2 pictures and I'm going to upload them. Now, as you know, using images in the image component is as simple as, and there are my images. I'll start with the dog. I'm just going to click them and drag them over here. You should resize your photos before you upload them. I know you've heard that before, but you can do some minor cropping here. And you can also rotate the picture if you have to, but it should already be edited when you upload it. So we're going to click on advanced. Oh, all my other windows went away. What would be a good title for this? I'm going to say adult. I don't suppose that has to be, it should be more like a sentence. So with that one, I'm just going to say adult male Rottweiler with typical rust-colored markings. So the purpose of this is just to describe what a Rottweiler looks like. The purpose of the photo is so that someone who can see can look at the photo and see that it is a Rottweiler because of the markings. Again, because of the way the component is written, it's going to take whatever title you put and put it in the alt text in the code. If you give it a one-word title, you should give it alt text. but it is perfectly fine to just give it a good descriptive title. And you, of course, know that to link to anything, you can cut and paste from an outside URL, or you can click and drag a document. And that, of course, is optional also. The description is optional also, but you can sort of leave any sort of notes in there. And then the other way, one other way that you can edit the image is to change the image width in pixels. Anytime you do any sort of manipulating of images within AEM, you always want to go smaller rather than bigger, because if you go bigger, it's going to distort the photo and it's just going to be really bad quality. But I've already edited that photo the way I wanted it, so I'm going to just leave that blank. And then image alignment, left, right. And I'm going to go ahead and align it right and say okay. Now if we do change the pixels, I'm going to change it to 400 pixels. I think it was about 800 pixels wide, so we're going to go down to half the size. And there we go, and you can see the quality is still pretty good. One of the things about using the image component is that we're going to use some column control here. So one of the things about using the image component is that it just gives you another option for laying out text with images. And so if you do a 2-column setup, you can put them side by side. And basically what that does is, rather than, you know, when you use your photos within the rich text and you click on the alignment, what it does is wraps the text around the photo. What this does is just lines it up side by side. And this is also helpful for so this is what it looks like on a big screen. However, if you have a mobile device, and I can't get to the screen to make it smaller, I can't adjust the size of my window. But basically, if you were looking at this on a phone, it wouldn't line it up like this because you wouldn't be able to see either one very well. So what it does is it'll take the left column and put it on top. And so if you've got a lot of images and text or different articles or things on one page, it'll stack them up and break them up in a mobile environment, keeping them separate, keeping the image together with the rich text. And basically what it does is takes the left column first and puts that on top, and then the right column on bottom. All right, let me go back in edit mode. And we're going to go here to edit, and I'm going to put this. Okay, sorry, I just saw your message, Robbie. Were you able to see the text when I hovered over it?
Yeah. At one point, I didn't know if you wanted to point out to them that
Okay,
when you hover, you can see that altered.
all right. I'll go to the desktop here in a minute and show you guys that. What I'm going to do, I got the chat window open. You see this image? The target audience would be parents and the athletes themselves, conveying fun, soccer, athletics. Um, does anyone or everyone want to go ahead and type in the chat box what sort of title or alt text you would give this image? I'll give you a minute. Okay. Thank you. No one has any ideas? That's good. That's good. Thank you. Those are both very good. I'm just going to take the first one. I don't have my my roster up, so I don't necessarily know your first names from your email address there, but Pam wrote children playing an action-packed game of soccer, and then Teresa wrote boys and girls in bright colored clothing playing a game of soccer, and both of those are very good. So I'm just gonna copy and paste the first one, and we're gonna use that there. So that's very good. And then I'm just gonna say okay to see how big it is. That is huge, but it looks good. I'm gonna go into preview mode. And you'll notice when I hovered over, and now I can't get it to come up. For a split second when I hovered over this picture, the alt text came up. Ah, there it goes. Children playing an action-packed game of soccer. So when you hover over pictures, the I can't remember, what is that called, Robbie? That little the text that comes up.
You want the alt text?
Yeah, but doesn't that have a different name? That box that pops up?
I'm not sure. I've always just called it the alt text.
Alt text. Okay, so we'll stick with that. Alt text. Of course, it's not doing it on my desktop again now. But so there it is. Now, if we're going to go back into the edit area and show you. Oh no, you can't do that here. So what we've got to do is say, okay, I'm going to go back into preview, and then here I am going to view the page source. And so basically I'm going to show you the code. So this is what the code on that page looks like, and we've got some stuff about and scripts about that tells AEM what to do with the different things.
Melissa, in AEM, because you have that left panel, you have to do view this frame.
So let me go back here. Where was it? Oh, view this frame.
Yeah, this frame, and then
view
frame
source.
There you go.
View frame source. Okay, there we go. I was going to say that was a lot of scripting there, a lot of scripts. And so, of course, this is all of this Greek here for you all is the code for the page itself, for the template, the way it looks, all of the information it's pulling in. And then when we get down here, so here's the paragraph. Why don't I see the image? Am I being blind? Oh, here it is. Image. Again, that's the script. It's right above. Here we go. So this is what, when we're talking about alt text, this is what we're talking about. Embedded inside that C of code is the alt text. And so out of everything on there, this is what, besides the actual text, this is what your screen readers are reading. This is what someone would, with voice activation, would talk about. That's what they wanted to highlight or select. And then again, over here, we have I don't see it. It's buried in all this all this code. There should be. Here it is down here. Oh no, that's not it. That's anyway. You get the gist in all of that. This is what we're talking about with the alt text. It's in the code. And the image component took what was in the title and moved it into the alt text, so that no matter what you do with your image, it'll be 508 compliant. It looks like we're just about out of time. Does anyone have any questions? If not, you are welcome to leave, and we'll see you next. Oh,
There was a question from earlier.
yes, Mary Beth, I'm sorry, I almost forgot. Mary Beth asked, would it be a good idea to go into our websites, remove the pictures and compress them before we put them back on our site? I'd say that you can go to your assets and look at these numbers. And if they're big, if they've got an MB instead of a KB, I would say yes, it's a very good idea to go ahead and download that image and you know, resize it, and then use the compression and then put it back. Otherwise, if it's a reasonable, you know, a little bit over 100 kilobytes for an image, I'd say that that's okay, you know, up to 150. And yes, I will email you the PowerPoint this evening. That was the other question. You're welcome, everybody. If you have no more questions, I'm going to hang out here for a minute or two. You are dismissed, and we'll see you next month.